Hello, I'm Nile, and this is PRN Test Drive. Today we're taking a look at this 2013 Mercedes-Benz S550 4matic. Now this is a short wheelbase sedan. In the US you could have only gotten these for this generation as a long wheelbase, but here in Canada and most of the rest of the world you have the choices between both a short and a long wheelbase, added about 6 inches to the rear seat space. But this is a pretty good option for somebody like myself because, I'm at the point now where I don't necessarily need to have a long wheelbase vehicle. Even when I had my 7 Series, I didn't actually really use the back seats for myself, but it was good for my kid when we were in a car seat. But why am I talking about if it's good for me? Normally we're just talking about these cars here on Test Drive because we've had a chance to feature them. And I would like to thank the owner of this vehicle for letting me drive their S-Class because, as you know, I do love driving these classic luxury cars. Even though this one's only 10 years old, it still falls into our classic car category here. But big thanks to the owner, which is actually me. I bought this car. This one is mine, folks. If you've been watching us here on Test Drive for a little while, you'll know I kind of teased this in our last episode that I did on that nice 13 Cadillac XTS. This is the one that I ended up going with. It's funny. I'll touch on it a little bit. If you're really not interested, skip ahead by like 1 minute. But yeah, I had driven that Cadillac for about a week thinking, what should I buy? And I drove it to go and see this car, and I said to myself, you know what? That Cadillac really is nice. Drives well, it's comfortable, it's quiet on the road. And then I got behind the wheel of this and I forgot completely about that Cadillac. And that's the way it really should be because it is a flagship luxury sedan, a Mercedes-Benz S-Class. There really is nothing better. This is the best or nothing. And we're going to be going over everything about this car today so that if you are in the market for a W221 Mercedes-Benz S-Class, you'll be better equipped to buy one. And if you're just interested in seeing what these cars are all about, I'm going to be talking about absolutely everything there is to know about it. Because I'm pretty excited. I don't know if you can tell, but I am really happy to be finally showing you this car. This has been in the works now for a couple weeks, so it's all official now. Here she is, the new PRN, whatever you want to call it, the Luxo barge. It is the new car here in my driveway. So let's talk a little bit about the W221. This specific car, at least, has about 100,000 kilometers on it, which is pretty good. I've seen quite a few of them for sale with more. You can definitely get more because this seems to be one of the more reliable Mercedes-Benz vehicles you can buy. And we'll talk about that at the end when we go over our buyer's guide, but these are relatively well taken care of for the most part. If you're looking for one of these, with that 4.6 liter twin turbo V8 engine producing 429 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque, it is an M278 engine with the 7G-tronic automatic transmission. Now, it's pretty much the same transmission that we have in my C-Class, which I am keeping. If you're curious about that, we do still have it. And it drives extremely well, as you would imagine. With the 4matic vehicles like this, you're only getting airmatic. You cannot get active body control. That was only on the rear wheel units. But this is the one to go with. The airmatic system on this is actually pretty reliable. Things to look out for, again, we'll talk about it at the end, but it's more the compressors than anything else. Compressor on the vehicle for the air system can kind of go, but again, we'll talk about that after. I want to talk about why these are such great cars. Now, I've been in the market for a new vehicle for a little while now. In fact, really, the C-Class wasn't ever meant to be a long-term vehicle, but I was looking for things that I thought would be kind of cool. I looked at the E-Class, the S-Class, the GL even, but I did settle on this after watching a number of videos saying that this really is the one to get. There are a number of YouTubers out there who either work on cars or buy cars and work on them that say this really is the best one to go with. And you can't get much better, aside from going with an AMG, than the final year of production, because this ended in 2013, and this is really the one to get. So if you're looking for something that is a little bit more reliable, I would definitely take a look at a 2013, or it seems like 2011, 12, and 13 are the best for this generation, but this generation as a whole is good. The previous generation, the W220, which I love, it's got some problems, and then even the more recent one, the W221, which just got replaced, there's some problems with those ones as well. So this is the one to buy if you're planning on keeping it long term. So as mentioned, in the US, you could only get a long wheelbase. This one being a short one, you do notice it, especially the way that I sit. There's not like a ton of backseat space, but this is a really well-equipped VIN, despite being a shorter one. And I'm going to call this a sport shorty like we used to talk about with the E38s, because this does have the sport package. But it seems like all the 2013, at least, S550s came with the standard Premium 2 package, which included front and rear Parktronic, the rear camera, keyless go, active multi-contour front seats with massage, and the multi-adjustable comfort type front head restraints. A lot of words to say that the headrests there can be moved forward and back, up and down, power operated, and they have little pillows that can kind of go around your neck. Not quite as nice as the new ones that actually come with their own pillows, but they are pretty good. Now this car also has the driver assistance package that has Distronic Plus, which is forward collision as well as adaptive cruise control, along with the pre-safe braking system. You also have active blind spot assist and active lane keeping assist. If you went with one of the other trims, other vehicles in the S-Class lineup, it would have still had blind spot assist and lane keep assist, but they weren't active. I don't know really what it changes with this because I haven't had a chance to try it out. I'm not going to go and try to crash the car, but I believe it'll actually help you stay in those lanes and stay away from crashing into other vehicles. This also has the Sport package. There were two available for this model year. This is the regular Sport package. Adds these really beautiful 19-inch AMG triple 5-spoke alloy rims. I think they look extremely nice. You also have the Sport body styling with the bumpers, side skirts, and rear end. So it gives it a little bit sportier look, and especially compared to the pre-facelift, this looks a lot more like my C-Class and really is, you know, traditional to the Mercedes styling language at the time, but it does make it look just a little sportier than you would get on the non-sport models. Now here's where things get just a little confusing because I'm going off of information that I was able to find, which mostly focuses on the US market. The brochure that I'm going off of is US specific, so things might have been a little different here in Canada, but I have almost everything that comes with the rear seat package, which includes the 8-way power adjustable back seats as well as heat and ventilation. I don't get the 4-zone automatic climate control. Now perhaps that was only available if you had a long wheelbase version, because I've seen some of these vehicles, even some of the higher end like AMGs, that didn't have those features in the back seat. I think it is kind of peasant if you're getting one of these cars and you've got the blank spaces for the power adjustment in the back seat and there's nothing there. So at least with this one, you do have the outboard rear seats, can move forward and back and recline a little bit, as well as the headrests. Those are all power operated with heat and ventilation. Now again, depending on which package it really would have been, and if it was a long wheelbase versus this, both sides could have had memory options as well. This car doesn't have it, but if you are on the right rear passenger, you can control the front seat to move it out of the way. You could not do that no matter what with the left seat. Obviously the driver's seat will not be able to be moved except by the driver as a safety thing, but this does have almost everything that you get back there. So maybe if you are more of an expert when it comes to these vehicles, or you're in the States, or you've had a couple of them, let me know, is that package exclusive to the long wheelbase version, and do we essentially have it here because it's a shorty? Now I've got two standalone options on this vehicle, again based on what I was able to find on that brochure. We do have Night View Plus with pedestrian detection. It's awesome. You get a pop-up in your gauge cluster. Essentially the screen in your driver information cluster changes to the night view mode. Works extremely well. I absolutely love it. And then you also have the heated steering wheel, which is nice. I like having that. Obviously in this climate you would want to have it. And we have the rear seat entertainment system. It has a DVD system that allows you to watch movies in the back seats, but it also seems like you can listen to different channels from the audio system. There are ways to control who's listening to what based on what's in the back end. There's like 4 remote controls to control everything, but I finally found the headphones that go with the car, so I'm going to try them out hopefully this week and see if they actually work. But there are 2 screens in the back for the passengers back there. They don't have as much control as say a modern S-Class would have, where you can see your map and things like that, but for a 10-year-old car, pretty darn functional. Now, because I have the opportunity to drive this car for a lot longer, because I own it, I'm going to be doing some more videos on it. But I really do want this to be a pretty comprehensive review like we do here on Test Drive. So when we look at the exterior of this car, again, it's very similar to my W204 Mercedes C-Class. Now, obviously, the S-Class is the one that gets all the design changes, and then the other vehicles will trickle down and get them because the S-Class needs to be the best. But you can see that there are some definite styling cues between the two vehicles. The daytime running lights at the bottom, they're pretty much identical. The headlight design as well, being bigger on this car, is pretty similar. And even though there are 2 projector ballasts here that you can see on the front of each headlight assembly, only the outside portion actually works. They are bi-xenon headlights. but the inner portion are for the infrared lasers that are used for the night vision system. I think it's kind of cool. You've got the Distronic plate in the front grille, which is still something that you see on a modern S-Class today, as well as our 3-pointed star on the hood. Aside for the rest of the vehicle, pretty traditional to a Mercedes S-Class. You take a look at the back area. What makes an S-Class an S-Class really comes down to the fact that the rear part of the window is essentially right on top of that rear axle, right in the middle there. That design comes right down. And then the back end, some people call this the bangle butt of the S-Class because it does sort of look like an E65 BMW 7 Series in the sense that the taillights don't quite line up with the trunk. I think it looks really good, and I really think that this facelift looks a lot better because the previous introduction of this W221 S-Class, the taillights had a body colored strip, 2 strips actually, that ran through those taillights. I think that this looks a lot more modern and something that will age very gracefully into the future. Now, because there is so much to go over on this car, we're going to do something that James usually does. We're going to get into the back seat of the car first, then we're going to get into the front seat. We're going to go over all the features and everything on this car, and then we're going to take it on a road test. We're in the back seat now of the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. I am on the passenger side rear here, which is where you would be if you were in a long wheelbase vehicle. But even though this is the short one, it is still a pretty nice place to be. Now, I've moved the seat up completely. As you can see here, I do have control to be able to move it forward and back and all that, which is nice. I also have the ability to recline back. It's pretty good, actually, right? Not quite as nice as some of the new ones with those executive packages, but you do have some good options there, plus the headrest will move and all that. So fun stuff overall. Pretty good controls for a vehicle of this, size, essentially, right? Considering it is a short wheelbase vehicle, but I like it overall. A couple air vents in the center, plus on either B pillar, which is good. You've got your little vanity mirrors up at the top. The screens for your DVD system with some inputs on the side, so you can have headphones and then video inputs as well. And then, as I mentioned, I do have these headphones. They say they're powered by AKG, which is interesting because the audio system on the vehicle itself is a Harman Kardon system. And don't know if there's any battery in these. As I mentioned, I only just found them. Looks like they're normal AAA batteries, so I'm not going to put those back in because we'll want to replace those, but you do have 2 sets of headphones, which is a nice plus to have if you're spending time back here, right? If you really are using it for the rear seats, you kind of want to have those things. But back here is nice, even though feature-wise it's not over the top as we've seen on some of the newer vehicles like the BMW 7 Series that we drove. Overall, though, it's what you would expect, especially from a short wheelbase vehicle. I can control the rear sunshade and both sides. It's the window switch controls that run the actual side sunshades because they are power operated. So you just click the button down once, lowers or opens the shade depending on which direction you're going, and then again to do it for the window. So I think it's kind of good. Driver's seat has controls over all that. Both passengers have controls all over that. So it is nice to have that. It's pretty simple. I mean, you don't need to have 47 buttons to do all of that. Now, in the center here, I do have some remotes. Pretty basic remote overall, but it does work. They use AAA batteries, and I've got 4 of them. I don't know why I need 4, because I've got one for each side here. I've got one for command, so I could go from here and control things through the command system. But then there's another mode, which I believe is if you got the split view. This car could have come with a split view front screen. It's not power operated, and it's something you'll see when we go in the front, but the driver could be viewing one set of information and the passenger could be viewing something else. Now, the way this one's set up, theoretically, the passenger could watch a video as long as the screen's turned towards them. But you do have some controls here to be able to switch between the different modes for the TVs and everything here, which I think is kind of nice. So you've got those options there, but just a normal cup holders in the front here. They pop open, functional enough. But again, if you went with the top of the top when it came to this vehicle, long wheelbase with the rear seat package, you'd have some controls here in the center, which would be fun. But I don't really care. Everything else is nice though. I think my favorite part on the interior here is this headliner. This is a Designo anthracite headliner. That is probably the only sort of upgrade on this car, despite the fact that I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the color options are on this, because this does have the Magnetite exterior paint color. It's Magnetite Black, even though it looks kind of grayish. It's nice. The interior here is just gray, but then it's the dark wood trim. That's what I couldn't find on that brochure, is everything else was talking about a lighter wood trim, but nothing about this dark, sort of really dark brown, almost black. I think it looks really good. It contrasts very well So I do like that. You know me, I don't like black interiors. It is nice to have some color. But backseat space here makes sense. It's quiet. You got some guy over there doing his lawn mowing here at the Railway Museum in St. Thomas. I barely hear it. And that's the great thing about driving this car. Even though it's not the long wheelbase, you don't get that extra 6 inches of extra road comfort. Interior here is so quiet. I absolutely love it. We're going to jump into the front now. I want to talk about some of the stuff there because it is really cool. All right, front seats here of the S-Class on a short wheelbase. This is definitely the place to be, and I'm absolutely in love with it because you've got everything that you really want. I mean, again, 10 years old. I know the S-Class is the pinnacle and shows you what the future is going to have in store, but even as a 10-year-old vehicle, there's a lot of good stuff going on. The first thing I want to talk about isn't even on the inside here. It comes to the washer nozzles. There are 4 sets of 2. There's 8 jets that shoot out of this car to clean the windshield. Now, they're not the magic wipers that have them actually built into the wiper blades, but still extremely functional. You've got headlight washers as well. It's all built in. Works super duper nice. Now, again, we've got that Designo Alcantara headliner here. Really nice. It's super soft. Helps to insulate the rest of the vehicle. And then if you went with the V12 or I think even the S63 AMGs would have had full leather everywhere. This doesn't have leather all over the place. There's a bit of leather on the top of the instrument cluster and gauge pods here. Everything else, though, is more of a harder material, which is fine because, you know, again, this car probably was like $150,000 roughly in Canada. It was about base MSRP for one of these in the States was like $95,000 if you got a long wheelbase S550. So, you know, you're looking at a lot of car for that price. So, you know, it's an S-Class, right? Now, it's not going to come fully loaded unless you go with all the features, but I do like it. If we start in the very front here, in front of the driver, you've got that 8-inch driver information cluster. Got a lot of good information in there. Very simple. You've got your tachometer and then some basic stuff, but all your, you know, emergency stuff, you know, if there's ever any faults with the car, everything pops up there. Really works well. And I actually, you know, my heart sunk the other day. I was driving it to London and it popped up saying that the Distronic, pre-safe, and blind spot were all unavailable. And I thought, great, car's broken, we're in trouble. But no, it was just really a lot of rain coming down and it ended up blocking the sensors. So as a precaution, it just disabled it until everything cleared up, which is fine. We see that quite a bit on newer vehicles too. So I'm not too worried about it because it wasn't a major issue. It cleared itself up. But the driver does have that digital speedometer as well as a tachometer, fuel gauge, and your coolant temperature. Not much else you really need there, but it works well. Around the steering wheel, there are quite a bit because you've got one of those shift-by-wire controllers to go into drive. Makes sense. You do have flappy paddles too. I don't ever use this in sport mode. Why would you? But you've got that there. Your Distronic controller is on the top left. You can adjust the distance between the vehicles, well, set the cruise control and all that. Your normal turn signal indicator is also your wipers. That's all below it. And then a smaller one right at the bottom, that's to adjust the steering wheel as well as the heated seat control. So all of it's right there. Super straightforward. Seat controls and everything makes sense. You know, you've got quite a lot of adjustment for this car. And then all your window controls. There's a lot of good storage on this car as well. Both front doors have storage compartments on the side. The rear doors have a small ashtray in them, but you've got storage compartments in the middle. The center console here opens up either way depending on where you're sitting, as well as a glove box. So there's a lot of good stuff on here. I want to talk about our infotainment system here, Command. We haven't really talked about it too much here on Test Drive because it was already being phased out by the time we started doing new vehicle reviews, and then any of the classic stuff has been too old. But Command works really well on this car. One of the things I really like is how many audio inputs there are. We've got AM, FM, satellite radio, disc, memory card, music register, media interface, USB, rear seats, auxiliary, and then you can just turn everything off. So you got a lot of options there. Navigation, obviously out of date, it's 10 years old, but it is functional enough. I like just having the screen on with the nav just so I can see where I am, even if it's not completely up to date. But one thing I do like about this controller is, just like on my C-Class, you know, it's like a little knob that goes around. It won't actually allow you to go past where it is on the screen. So it knows where you are and it actually prevents you from turning it. So it's really, you know, one of those things that's above and beyond what you would expect on a car. Something that might not be as functional down the road if they start to break, especially if you ram your fingers and try to break through that sort of fake wall there. But I like it because as you're scrolling through, you know you've come to the end. Obviously, you're looking at it on the screen, but it stops you from moving it on the controller. I think it's just awesome. Plus, above the controller, you've got your little phone pad, which works obviously as a phone. You can type in your phone numbers, but it's also your music favorite, so you can switch in between your favorites pretty easily through there. There are a lot of other things within the command system, like your multifunction contour seats. Essentially, when you take a corner, it'll bolster up the side in order to prevent you from moving around in your seat. There's 2 different intensity levels as well as off. You've got some ambient lighting. There's really just 3 colors on it. I've got it on polar, but I haven't actually driven the car at night to see exactly how it looks. And then you've got things like the trunk opening and the rear sunshade controls. So some stuff within there. You've got your video as well, as I mentioned. If you are playing video, you can theoretically have it playing for your passenger as long as the screen is tilted, because this screen has a motor in it that will adjust it. It's like, I think it's like 15 degrees. Like, it's not a huge adjustment, but I do keep it angled towards the driver just because I'm using it, but it is pretty cool there. And then just to the left of the screen, some controls I pretty much never use. Sport for the aromatic system. This car doesn't go in sport mode. It stays in comfort mode. You've got your park distance controllers. You can turn that off, Parktronic. And you can also raise the height of the vehicle as well. So if you're going over a large speed bump, you have the option there, plus the controls to turn the actual screen and the brightness for it. So some basic stuff there, makes all sort of sense once you've driven it. Moving down, you've got an elegant analog clock with the Mercedes star in the middle of it, plus all your HVAC controls, and another little cubby underneath. That's where you would load your DVDs or your CDs, as well as an SD card reader if you wanted to listen to music that way. So pretty cool stuff overall. Cigarette lighter, ashtray, and cup holders below that, plus the controls for your command system. Because it's not a touchscreen, there actually is a piece of glass or a piece of plastic covering the screen. You can't touch it. Everything has to be done through the controller, and that's fine. You have some options to drop the rear headrests. I don't know if you can see it on the video, probably not, but they are power operated. They'll go all the way flat. And when you open up the doors, the headrest comes up and greets you. So awesome stuff there. Plus you've got your sunshade and your volume control. So you know what? It makes a lot of sense. It's not over the top. They're not trying to ram a bunch of stuff into the overall cabin experience here. I like it. I like having buttons, and I like it the way that this is set up. I'm not a huge fan of the new S-Class. It's just one big screen. I like having some physical stuff to touch, so I do like it. But a couple other things to talk about. We do have, as I mentioned, the massaging seats. So you've got a couple different profiles there, heat and ventilation, as well as all the adjustments on the doors. Both front seats have power as well as memory options. That's nice to have. And that's more or less it. That is the interior on this awesome car. A couple of things you could have added to it. You could have had a panoramic sunroof. I believe this portion would have been a little shorter, kind of in line with the B pillar, and then you would have had the second sunroof at the back there. But this one works pretty well. I don't mind being able to close it up, especially with that nice Alcantara headliner. Ooh, it just feels good. So open or closed, it's a good place to be in. But yeah, I'm really loving this car. Can't really go wrong with it. And we're going to talk about that as we hit the road. So let's take it for a drive, see what we think about it, and see if this really could be the S-Class of your dreams, because it certainly is for mine. Well, if you've been watching some of the videos here that I've been doing since moving to St. Thomas, you'll notice that this is more or less the same area that at least I do all the B-roll in, but it's also the same area that we were filming some of the stuff that we did with the Volkswagen Cabrio. So we're going to head out on our road test here, taking it nice and slow as we're driving along this gravel road, because it's an S-Class. You really aren't meant to be going off-roading with this, and I don't want to have anything too egregious here to make my life a little worse. The paint is not in the greatest shape. I do need to work on it a little bit, and I realized my heated steering wheel was on. Turn it off now. Heated portion really is just where the leather wrapped portion is. The wood on either side doesn't get warm. But you know what? You don't really need it on a day like today. It says it's 23 degrees outside, a little bit higher with the Humidex. It's been pretty brutal the last few days as well. It felt like 40 a couple days ago. So I've been enjoying having a car with air conditioning, as you can imagine. It is one of the nice things about having a vehicle like this. Is one of the things I was missing on the C-Class after it broke. Now it's nice to have AC again. So let's talk a little bit, and by a little bit I mean a lot of it, about this Mercedes-Benz S-Class, because I love it. It's hard not to, honestly, right? You know, you're driving a flagship luxury car, why would you not like it? This is definitely the one to get. I'm really impressed with how this car drives, rides, and handles. As you would expect as an S-Class, this is the one to go for. It is super smooth, and going over bumps like these train tracks we're about to go over, what train tracks, right? You can barely feel it. And that's the whole point of this car, right? It is not meant to be a performance vehicle. It has power, absolutely. 429 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's a lot of power out of a big vehicle like this. Now, again, because it is big, it doesn't feel super fast. But yeah, if you do need to gun it, it does get the job done. You can get up to speed without any issues. I haven't had any problems getting up to speed on highways and things like that, as you would imagine, because there is enough power to get things going. And even off the line here, you know, nice effortless amount of power out of it. I'm quite content. But again, you know, I don't buy these cars because I want to go fast. I just want to be comfortable and cruise around and enjoy the overall experience. Now I'm going to be quiet for a second here. Nothing, right? There's no sound on the inside of this vehicle, which is the way you want it. You want it to be nice and quiet because, again, people who are buying these cars, they don't want to hear all the peasants on the outside. And that's how it is. That's why you got to get those window shades up on the back. You don't want people looking in. You don't want to be hearing any of the noise of all the calamity going on outside with the people that can't afford a Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Because let's be honest, folks, you can afford a Mercedes S-Class. You get something like this, you're getting quite a lot of car for not like a crazy amount of money. If you think about it, if it really was, even on the conservative side of things, like $130,000 new, and you know, these go for anywhere from about $20,000 to $40,000 Canadian, depending on condition and all that, you get a lot of car, right? You're getting a whole lot of car for that price point, and it is well worth it because it is a superb ride. Now, as we're sitting here at a traffic light, I always like to remind folks, maybe you've never driven a Mercedes, or maybe you do and you didn't realize if you push your foot all the way to the bottom of the brake, it does brake hold. And I love that because you don't have to push a button and figure, oh, I want to do the brake hold. Nope, it's there whenever you want it and not there if you don't need it. I absolutely love that feature. So it is nice to have, but we are going to try to wind our way over to our little highway bypass here so I can give you a bit of an idea of how this vehicle performs outside of the city, because right now we're just driving around town here and it's not super fun, is it? So let's see. Give me a second here to get us to the highway and we'll go from there. We are getting closer to the highway now, but I just wanted to talk a little bit now that we're out of town, can kind of open it up a little bit more. Again, interior here still extremely smooth. That's the whole reason why you're buying a car with Airmatic. You want that extreme comfort, and it doesn't get a whole lot better than this. Really, the only way to get better than this is obviously long wheelbase. You get that extra 6 inches or so of travel between the front wheel axle, you know, the front axle and the rear. You get a little bit more space there, so the ride is typically smoother, but it is good. I mean, like, there's no complaints about the interior or comfort on this vehicle. It is really nice. And again, give it a little bit of gas. Oh, it's up to speed so effortlessly, and you barely hear it. Like, twin turbo V8. There is supposed to be, I think, depending on maybe which trim you go with, but the exhaust, there is supposed to be sort of a butterfly valve in there to open it up, make it sound a little bit nicer. I don't want that. I don't need it to be open. I think if I, again, there's like a sport mode. Let's see if I put it, because I have tested it. And it sounds about the same. I don't want more sound. I want it to be quiet, because again, that's the whole point of an S-Class, is that understated luxury. Well, not understated luxury, but you know, understated performance, because you know, you see it, you know it's an S-Class. It's pretty unmistakable as it comes up to you. You've got the hood ornament, it's got the size, it's got the behemoth, you know, weight to it. Everybody knows that you're driving it. But what I do like about it is, you know, you don't have to show off that you're a performance vehicle. It's quiet. I like it. So that's the way I want it. I know some people, I'm sure they'll take an S550 like this and throw a bigger exhaust on it, get maybe cat back or get rid of the resonators, things like that. I don't know. It's not for me. You know me. I like it original. And that's the way that I like to drive it. But yeah, everybody's got their own way of doing things. So I would like to have spent a little bit more time on our road test, but my GoPro battery is absolute garbage. And we've really done like 25 minutes of filming. It's already dead. So we're going to take it up on the bypass here, take it for a quick little rip, just so you can hear how it feels and see sort of the raw performance that comes out of this vehicle, why I'm so happy with it. So as we go around the corner here, again, seats hug the side of me as I go around, so I barely feel any difference. And then, woo! Oh yeah, buddy. Up to speed and no problem whatsoever. You can get into a lot of trouble with this car because of just how quick it goes up. And it's not like, you know, it's not like the new cars that have plug-in hybrid systems and all that. Like, it is just a normal twin turbo V8, if you can call a twin turbo V8 normal, but it gets the job done. Put smiles on your face for miles. Even though the fuel economy has been pretty terrible, it is still a lot of fun. From the time that I got the car, I've done about 1,000 kilometers on it, 12.7 liters per 100 kilometers, and that's not really ripping it around. Like, I just showed you that there. I've done it a couple times, obviously, when I was buying the car just to test it, make sure that there weren't any issues with, say, the catalytic converters being blocked up, or any issues with the engine going into limp mode. I've tested it a couple times doing it that way, but aside from that, it has been in as economical mode as possible. Obviously in the E mode for economy, but I don't really like to rip it. That's not the point of driving this car. It is really meant to be cruising around, enjoying it. There's nothing better than that. I mean, I just absolutely love the drive on this car. Again, I'm going to be quiet for a couple seconds here. I want you to hear we're cruising at, you know, highway speed. There's nothing. And if you hear anything, it's because the microphone picks up more than what we would normally be picking up, because it's attached to the car. It's closer to the windows. But it is so quiet here because we've got thicker glass. We've got UV laminated front windshield. Like, you know, it blocks out a lot of the sun. I find that when I get into this car, it's not as hot as it is in some of the other cars I've driven recently. The interior noise, again, because of the lamination and everything on this vehicle, the dual panel, almost, you know, like thickness of the windows, the Alcantara headliner, everything adds up to make this so quiet on the road. That's the whole reason why you buy an S-Class, is for that. Go and get an AMG if you want performance. But if you're looking for something that is truly enjoyable to drive, long haul, short haul, whatever it may be, as long as you enjoy driving, you like standing out a little bit, you don't mind spending a whole bunch of money on gas, and as we'll talk about maintenance as well, then the W221 S-Class is the way to go. The S550 is the way to go. So let's head back to a different area. We'll talk about some of the things you need to look out for if you're in the market for one of these vehicles. Now, I did touch on some of the things to look out for, or at least to be aware of, as we were doing our walk around and talking about the car. It's hard to say that there are any Mercedes vehicles that are truly reliable. You know, it all comes down to maintenance and all that, and I always do recommend having your vehicle inspected by a trusted mechanic before making any purchase decisions, which is actually something I did here. I always say to do it, I never do it myself, but for this one we actually did have it mechanically looked over, made sure that everything was in good working order. Really just needed a front set of tires for it to pass safety, but everything else about it seems to be in pretty good working order. But there are some things to look out for if you are in the market for one of these. The M276, M278, and M157 engines all suffer from a timing chain rattle. Now, it is fixed with a non-return check valve, and something that, if it's been done to the vehicle, will extend the life of it by quite a bit, but it doesn't seem like it's a crazy amount of work that needs to be done in order to make that happen. The 7G-tronic transmission can have rough shifting. I do notice that on my C-Class, especially like it's like going from second into third, just a couple gears that like it kind of clunks in a little bit. Doesn't make a noise. It's just sort of a weird shift into it. I haven't noticed it with this car, but something to definitely be aware of. Because the W221 uses a shift-by-wire system, means there is no actual mechanical linkage to the transmission, it's all electronic, the intelligent servo module can fail. That is a somewhat straightforward replacement on those. Same thing as with like the parking brake, it's an electronic parking brake. Those can also suffer from failures, and it's nothing with the actual equipment, it's just like the module will go bad, or there's like a speed sensor that will fail. So typical things like that, not crazy to fix. And I mentioned when it comes to the aromatic system, the air compressor is prone to failure. And when I say prone to failure, I mean that's usually the culprit when it comes to any aromatic issues. And even that, again, is not a big deal. You know, if one of the front tires has an issue, one of the front wheels where the aromatic will stop working, it'll lower the front car so that at least it's level on both sides. And then same thing if the rear fails, the rear will level down. But there's not crazy repairs to be done on these. You know, we always talk about aromatic with some of the older ones. You're looking at like maybe $1,000, $1,500 per axle to fix it. But I took a look at Rock Auto to get non-OEM parts for these. They're like $300. So yeah, maybe labor is going to be a little bit, but for the most part, you can get aftermarket parts for these cars without having to break the bank. And yeah, I know this only has about 100,000 kilometers on it, but still, am I really going to put OEM parts into this car? If I want to keep it long term, Well, maybe, but I'm sure the aftermarket stuff is going to work just as well and get the job done. Now, most people say to go with the S550. That is the better option. They did make an S400 hybrid. It was one of the first hybrid vehicles that Mercedes came out with, used a small hybrid system in order to boost the performance of the vehicle. It was rear-wheel drive only, but they do exist out there, the S400s. I've seen a couple of them come up for sale. There was also an S350 Blue Tech, used the diesel engine. I would probably avoid that one. I'm not a big fan of diesels when it comes to these vehicles. And not that the engines are anything to be concerned about. The engines are typically bulletproof, but it's the emissions control stuff that will kill those engines. So again, I would avoid that. And then Mercedes also made two AMG models, the S63 and the S65 AMGs, one with the V8, one with the V12, and then the S600 was the V12. Again, this is kind of the one to go with. If you're looking for your best bang for your buck, this seems to be the most reliable. There's a lot obviously to go wrong on it. Keep in mind, it is still a luxury flagship sedan, so there are things that will break on it, but it is a little bit more reliable than the rest. And again, compared to the other Mercedes S-Class generations, the W220 and W222, this being in the middle, seems to be the one to go with. So as I mentioned, I've watched a lot of reviews on them, a lot of mechanical reviews on these vehicles. People say this is the one to get, so I bit the bullet. I take a chance. We're going to see how it goes. You know, obviously maintenance is key on it, but we are going to be doing some stuff here on test drive over the next little while with this car. I'm going to be daily driving it and seeing how it is to live with and talking about maintenance and stuff. And just like we did with the E38 7 Series, talking about the maintenance overall, I will be doing the same thing here with this car. We'll talk about it just as we did about a week or two ago on my C-Class. We'll talk about any maintenance and repairs I do to the vehicles, cost on them, so that if you are in the market for one of these, or if you have bought one and you're curious to see what the ownership is like on it, it'll give you a little bit better idea. But I am super excited about it. I'm sure you can tell throughout the entire video. I've had nothing but a smile on my face, so I am going to be enjoying the hell out of this car. Thank you for watching. As always, we try to get back in the comments all the time, so leave a comment below if you have any questions about this vehicle or if there's specific things you'd like to see us do with it. But until next time, thanks for watching and take care.